Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
All right, so today we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
Atomic and hydrogen bombs.
That's right, yeah.
And, your research mentions uranium-235 and plutonium-239 as examples. But I think before we get into, the nitty-gritty of how fission works, what's really striking is even those early bombs, we're talking the equivalent of 10,000 to 20,000 tons of TNT.
It's just, it's almost impossible to even fathom that kind of energy,
Yeah, how do you even wrap your head around that?
You can't, really.
And then you have the hydrogen bomb,
Right.
city killer. They weren't exaggerating.
No, and that's where you start talking about yields exceeding 1 million kilotons.
Right, for hydrogen bombs?
Yeah, 1,000-fold increase. It's a different beast altogether.
And that's where the difference between fission and fusion becomes so important.
Exactly. One, you're talking about splitting a heavy atom. The other, you're fusing these lighter ones, like those hydrogen isotopes that were mentioned in the podcast.
Yeah, and the amount of energy that's released.
Oh, it's exponentially different.
It's mind-blowing.
It really is.
And what's even crazier is that a hydrogen bomb uses an atomic bomb as its trigger.
It's like a bomb within a bomb.
Yeah, it's wild. So you have the atomic fission reaction, and that sets off the thermonuclear fusion. It's just like layers of destructive power.
And the scale, it's just, look, imagine a firecracker.
Okay.
Now imagine a raging inferno that engulfs, everything in sight. That's kind of the difference we're talking about.
Yeah. And it's not just, an abstract analogy. Professor Edward Morse, I think you mentioned him in your research, he's a nuclear engineering expert.
Right, I've heard him speak. Yeah.
He was saying that, the Nagasaki bomb, that had a blast radius of, roughly a mile.
About a mile, yeah.
But he said a hydrogen bomb, 5 to 10 miles, gone.
Everything gone.
Annihilation.
Total annihilation.
Can we clarify something here just real quick for our listener?
Sure.
We've been using atomic bomb, we've been using nuclear bomb,
right,
kind of interchangeably. What's the deal?
Yeah, that's a really common point of confusion. Basically, nuclear bomb is the broader term. It includes anything that derives its power from nuclear reactions. So that includes both your fission bombs, your atomic bombs, and your fusion bombs, your hydrogen bombs.
So all atomic bombs are nuclear bombs,
right,
but not all nuclear bombs are atomic bombs.
Exactly.
And this is where things get, really interesting, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's not just about the destructive power.
Mm-hmm.
It's about how these weapons changed the entire, the way countries interacted with each other.
The geopolitical landscape, absolutely.
Right. And you mentioned the Cold War
in
your research. That's the perfect example.
It's the perfect example because that's when everything changed.
Yeah.
The moment these weapons appeared on the scene.
Right. It's not about just winning a battle or a war anymore.
Right.
It's how do you even wage war when this is the thing hanging over your head?
Exactly. And that podcast you sent, they use that phrase, mutually assured destruction.
MED.
Right.
Which, could there be a more apt?
It's scary.
It's terrifyingly accurate, right?
Right.
Because both sides, the U.S. and the Soviet Union, they knew any kind of nuclear attack.
It wasn't even an option.
It meant global annihilation for both sides.
A stalemate where even if you won, it's what did you even,
What did you win?
Right.
You've destroyed the world.
Exactly. But, it might have prevented nuclear war back then, but things have changed.
Right, yeah.
It's a different world.
Yeah.
If you had to pick, what are you most concerned about today?
I think the biggest one is just proliferation. You mentioned North Korea.
Yeah.
And they're not the only ones.
Right.
More and more countries, some of them, with leadership that maybe isn't the most stable.
Right. And it's not just about them getting these weapons either. It's about the what ifs, right?
Right.
What if a hydrogen bomb got into the hands of, say, a terrorist organization?
Yeah. That's we're walking on a tightrope here, basically. So is there any hope? It feels very...
It's a topic.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic. But, is there anything that can be done?
I don't know if there are easy answers, but you did mention things like treaties.
Yeah.
Disarmament efforts.
Yeah.
The Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. Those are attempts to at least try to limit.
Right. Contain it a little.
Exactly. But not everyone signed on. And even the ones who have, sometimes they don't exactly play by the rules.
So it feels like we're just kind of holding on for dear life, hoping for the best.
It's a constant struggle.
Yeah.
And it highlights why things like diplomacy, international cooperation, they're so critical
Mm.
because we cannot let those efforts fail. Yeah, it's like anything else. Building trust, it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. Right.
But the alternative is just, it doesn't even bear thinking about.
Man, it's a lot to think about, isn't it?
It really is.
You start with these words like atomic, hydrogen, and they sound so, I don't know.
Simple.
Yeah, like almost clinical, But then you remember what they actually represent.
The reality behind them.
Yeah, and it's terrifying.
It is.
And I think that's kind of the point of, doing these deep dives.
Right.
It's not enough to just know like the dictionary definition of something,
Dude,
especially something like this. You have to understand like the power,
the history.
Yeah, the very real threat that these things still pose.
Because this isn't, some theoretical physics problem in a textbook.
Right.
This is real life. This affects all of us.
Yeah. And I think, for you listening out there, I mean, this whole deep dive, this was sparked by you.
Right.
By your questions, by the research that you sent over. Clearly, you're not satisfied with just the surface level stuff.
You want to dig deeper.
And that's what we're all about here, right? Because the more we understand these things, the more we know about these weapons,
The more empowered we are, really, to ask the right question.
Exactly, to have like real discussions about this stuff. Because it's easy to feel, I don't know, overwhelmed, I guess. Like, what can you even do in the face of this kind of power,
Right.
But I think knowledge it's the first step, isn't it?
Absolutely. Understanding is the foundation for any kind of meaningful action.
Yeah, exactly. So if this conversation has kind of left you feeling a little unsettled?
A little wrestling with some big questions.
Good. Those are the questions we should all be asking ourselves.
Absolutely.
And if you're out there and you're thinking, man, I really want to know more about, what's being done to get rid of these things, like what about these treaties? Do they actually work?
What about new technologies?
Yeah. Keep asking those questions. That's how we move forward. Because the conversation, it doesn't end here. This is an ongoing thing, and we all have a part to play in it.
We all have a stake in it, that's for sure.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.